This is Debbie Georgiani. Thank you for listening to the Station of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
Breaking down the importance of iodine. Is deficiency in iodine a big deal? How can you tell? What can one do about it? All within the big picture of our Catholic faith today. On The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of Saint Joseph. I'm Jim Havens. It is Wholeness and Healing Monday, fighting to cultivate the health of the whole person, mind, body, and soul. And we're here with our co-host, my lovely wife, Becky Havens. She's a Catholic wife and mother with a passion and calling to educate people about the importance of caring for our bodies that the Lord has blessed us with by living a healthy lifestyle. She helps others to think outside the cultural norms and to be their own advocate while not falling into the many pressures of modern medicine. She's the author of Toxin Free in 12 Months, a 12-month guide to help you transition over to a toxin-free lifestyle. She also wrote a boycott list of over 600 pro-abortion companies. You can get them both for free and learn more at her website, safehavensmama.com. Again, the topic today, the importance of iodine. And our disclaimer off the top here, we're not doctors, not scientists, just regular people looking to live well and raise our family. We believe in objective truth and in asking questions when things do not make sense. We're not giving medical advice here today, but we do want to offer a forum. We know a thing or two, but there's still a ton we don't know. We've got some personal experiences. We'll share some of that, but we know that you have some personal experiences too, and we want to learn from you. We'd love to hear from you today. We already put out the morning survey. We'll put the phone number out in a little bit. And if you want to call in, share any input, questions, comments, we'd love to hear from you. But Becky, let's get started. Share with us why this topic, the importance of iodine, why even talk about this today?
Sure. It's definitely a topic that probably most people don't think to even discuss, but a lot of health issues are linked to lower levels of iodine, and it's something that I experienced myself. And so I think it's important just to get the information out there. There's a ton of people who are dealing with iodine deficiency, and we have gathered quite a bit of information here, and I think it's important to just share what we know and share our experience, and then people can learn from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we did ask in the survey what people do know about this topic. What do you know about iodine? We asked, and many people said very little to nothing. One said we find it in salt. So I think that's what most people probably associate it with, iodized salt. Another said important for healthy thyroid function. That's right. And then another even deeper, we've got some smart people out there. This viewer or listener wrote, iodine is an important mineral for all of our cells and especially the thyroid. I find that those in my practice who have difficulty processing emotions are in need of iodine on a daily basis. So that's interesting, an emotional aspect here. I'm not sure about that. There's actually more that this listener did share with us. We'll get into that later on in a subsequent question. But we also asked, do you know anything about iodine deficiency? And that was about 50-50 split in the respondents. And just real quick on iodine, the biological aspect of it, you might remember it's on the periodic table. So it's an essential nutrient. Iodine is a critical trace element required for normal thyroid function and overall metabolic health. It is incorporated into thyroid hormones, which regulate metabolism, growth, and development. And deficiency can be a big deal. So lack of iodine can lead to various health issues, including goiter, cretinism, and mental impairment in severe cases. And the natural occurrence, the sources where you would find iodine, minerals found in minerals such as iodite and iodate, also present in high concentrations in seaweed and seafood. Also, iodine is present in soil, and its levels can vary depending on geographical location. And then finally, iodine is distributed in small quantities throughout the Earth's crust and in the oceans. Its concentration in soil and water can affect dietary iodine intake. It also is the 100-year anniversary of iodized salt, so we'll get into that in a bit as well. But anything else you want to share with us on iodine by way of introduction here for us, Becky?
Yeah, it feels like a lot when you start researching it, because it seems like there's a division between mainstream doctors and maybe more practitioner, a functional doctor, and what they might think is important. And it seems that the more that you start to learn about functional medicine and just getting to the root of things, a doctor in that area might suggest an iodine deficiency where a conventional doctor probably wouldn't even think that that was an issue. And so once you start digging in a little bit deeper and learning a little bit more about it, I feel like there's this big divide. And a lot of traditional doctors would just say, oh, you don't ever want to take iodine. That's dangerous. And it could be harmful to your thyroid or all these other issues. Don't exceed the amount in your iodized salt. Whereas some doctors that we've researched, they share that you can take, iodine at really high levels, and you might not even fully be getting the amount that you need. And so they share that there's no dangers or no side effects with it. So something that was difficult to kind of navigate when I was dealing with this was just learning, like, what's true? Is this safe? Is this not safe? How much can I take? What are the side effects? And there's a lot of great support out there. There's a really large Facebook group out there that I learned a ton from, where they have a ton of great information, and just working with a good doctor that can help you in this area is really helpful as well, because there are some issues with iodine that you don't want to, you want to make sure that you do have proper thyroid levels, and want to make sure that, different things are in check. Whereas some people think that you can just give out however much you need. I would also say that you need to be careful a little bit and kind of really get the right tests, make sure you're working with somebody. Although you might think differently. You might think it's just okay to just take whatever. I'm not sure, because some of the doctors say, just go ahead, so it's hard to say. There's a lot of sides to the iodine. So we'll discuss a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, talking about the importance of iodine today. And look, this is an important topic, because to be deficient in iodine is actually a really big deal, especially for pregnant women, especially for nursing women, lactating women, and also for children. So this is very important, and it's something that most people aren't thinking about. And there is some aspect of confusion here, because it's missing a lot of data in terms of there needs to be more studies in various aspects of this. So it's hard to know exactly what's going on for different parts here. But there's a lot of different evidence to look at. And there's also some stuff that we absolutely do know that is quite rock solid. And so I do want to just share a little bit of the history here. And this is an article entitled "How the Arrival of Iodized Salt 100 Years Ago Changed America." Again, it's a 100-year anniversary this year of iodized salt. And you may have never heard this history before. In the early 20th century, iodine deficiency was ravaging much of the northern United States. The region was widely known as the goiter belt for the goiters, heavily swollen thyroid glands that bulged from many residents' necks. The issue was more than cosmetic. Iodine deficiency during pregnancy and lactation often led to children with severely diminished IQ and other permanent neurological impairments. And Michigan was at the epicenter of the crisis. The soil there didn't have much iodine, nor did the freshwater Great Lakes. And so the inhabitants didn't have much iodine either. The first commercially available iodized salt, which is the idea they came up with to try to solve this problem, the first commercially available iodized salt in the United States appeared in Michigan grocery stores on May 1st, 1924. Other states took notice. The potential benefits were obvious. By the fall of 1924, iodized salt was being distributed across the nation. And the article concludes here that while it's been largely eliminated in the United States, iodine deficiency remains a significant problem in other parts of the world. About 50 million people show clinical symptoms of the condition. At the start of the 21st century, iodine deficiency was still the world's leading cause of preventable intellectual impairment. Now, what's interesting here is that the conclusion of this article is on the side of most people aren't deficient anymore, and this is not a problem in the United States anymore. Iodized salt has pretty much solved this. That's their conclusion, and that's what a lot of medical doctors would say. But my guess is they haven't done a lot of digging here, and there are other doctors, medical doctors, who have gotten into, deeper into this, and they say, actually, there's one in particular who says that he believes upwards of 97% of people in the United States should be considered deficient in terms of iodine. Now, I think where we get into the distinctions here is I don't think he's saying deficient to the level. I don't think they're talking about the same levels, right? Deficient not to the level of goiters or like severe neurological impairments, but maybe we're not that deficient, but still deficient to what would really be best for our bodies, and we're still having problems, different problems, based on not having enough iodine that need to be corrected. And so actually, we need more iodine than what the daily recommended allotment would be by the government. And so that's something to consider. And so we're going to consider that. We'll kick that around a little bit here and find out more information on all of that, and how we can know if we're maybe a bit deficient in iodine. And look, all of this fits into who we are in terms of the whole person, right? We are body and soul. And so, look, if we want to do the good that we are called to do in our lives, yes, the spiritual life is paramount. It is first. And yet our bodily lives are the way that we go about living that spiritual life in the world. And so we want to make sure that we have prudence and temperance and wisdom. And so we're getting into iodine today. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Please join us in a prayer to our guardian angel. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O holy guardian angel, take care of our soul and body. Enlighten our mind that we may know the Lord better and love him with all our heart. Help us in our prayers so that we may not give in to distractions. Assist us with your advice so that we may see the good and carry it out with generosity. Defend us from the insidious snares of the enemy and sustain us in temptations that we may always be victorious. Remedy our coldness in our worship of the Lord. Cease not to protect us until you have brought us into paradise, where we will praise our good God together for all eternity. Amen. The Station of the Cross has many ways to keep you informed about our programming. You can view the highlights of our primetime programming schedule or the full 24/7 programming grid at both thestationofthecross.com or the free iCatholic Radio app. Just search under the Programming tab. Our website also offers a printable version for your convenience.
"30 Seconds on the Gifts of the Holy Spirit," brought to you by the Station of the Cross. The gift of understanding helps the mind to comprehend revealed truths. Many times you might think to yourself, "I've explained this aspect of morality so clearly to my friend. Why can't she seem to get it?" It's a beautiful gift to have understanding of the faith and moral situations. Pray for others to receive that gift as well.
Welcome back to the Simple Truth, Wholeness and Healing Monday. Jim and Becky Havens here talking about the importance of iodine today. If you have any question or comment, you want to enter into the discussion here, give us a call, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. So Becky, you were sharing a little bit of your experience earlier, or you mentioned it, being deficient in iodine. I guess, how did you find that out? How did you discover that? And then what did you do? Did you just eat some more iodized salt? Did that solve it for you? Tell us a little bit more about your story.
Sure. So I worked with a woman who was really wonderful, and she suggested that I do a HTMA analysis, which is basically a hair analysis. So you cut off a bit of your hair at the very root of it, and then you send it into a specialized lab, and they analyze the hair, and then it goes through this huge system of all these possible combinations that you can have. The key to getting an HTMA analysis done properly is to have somebody who knows how to read them. So you could get the results, but have no idea how to interpret it. So this was key to knowing what it even meant, because it's just a bunch of notes that I had no idea what it meant. So she was great, and she really went through everything with me. And she pointed out that I think I had 7 out of 8 markers for iodine deficiency. And, she kind of asked me some questions, and I realized, I probably have, I do have all of those symptoms. I'm dealing with all those things. And she could tell that my iodine was deficient just by the lack of certain minerals I had, or the ratios from one mineral to another. So the hair test, it really goes through heavy metals. It can see how you're detoxing heavy metals, and it can also see the ratio for different minerals, basically, and metal levels, and it just compares all of them. So it was really interesting, and she gave me a whole protocol to start getting my iodine in check, and seeing if that was going to help with some symptoms. And the 2 things that, I really focused in on was raising my iodine, and then eating a lot more protein. And as soon as I started doing both of those things, I would say like 90% of my symptoms that I was having started to go away. And so I realized, okay, there's something to this, and I really probably am struggling with this. And so I think I followed the protocol for maybe 3 months, and I started to taper off of it. And she was like, all right, just start adding in different foods to kind of maintain these iodine levels. But the problem is that when you start developing or actually when you start having more stress and getting less sleep, and kind of getting out of that pattern of keeping those things up, I feel like it starts to go down again, and you start to get low in these things. So you have to kind of be able to maintain. And so they kind of call it like your maintenance level, and different doctors recommend just keeping a maintenance level of iodine to a certain milligram. And so, something that I'm going to start back on is kind of going through that program a little bit more, and getting back on. It was so interesting because the whole entire time I was on it, I didn't get sick once. Other people were getting sick around me. And it just, I felt so much better. I felt a lot healthier. I didn't feel run down. There are studies actually regarding iodine in the mood and depression and anxiety. And so that did get better for me as well. And a whole host of other issues. So things I didn't even realize that I was dealing with. And so I think it's so essential to, if you are struggling and you're not getting answers from your doctor, there are other ways to get answers. And that was one that God really led me through. He allowed me to win a 3-month program, something that I really had been wanting to do. And I entered some giveaway, and I won it. And so I was able to go through the steps and really work with her and work with my body to get things right. And it was really a gift, because on my own, I would not have been able to do it. I would have had no idea in the different ways that my body was struggling. And so they do recommend, a follow-up HTMA test. It's expensive. So you have to be able to afford that. It's just not something that's easily, most people probably can't do, and something that I rarely can do, maybe one follow-up at a certain point. But I was in a really bad place, and really needed, some answers. And so this was an answer to prayer. And so everybody's different. Every situation is different. They don't just say here is the basis. Everybody should be taking this every day. It really can be individual, and people have different effects from it. And so that's why I say it's really good to work with somebody who's going to guide you in that way. But in my experience, it was really helpful, and something now I know how to use properly, and something that you can even just tell by the way it starts to make you feel. You can tell pretty quickly within the first week that you feel better. And then that's kind of your way of saying, like, yeah, I guess I probably was deficient, and working with that. So I don't know, that's just my experience, but it was really a great blessing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I want to ask you about, we'll get to basically more detail on symptoms, detection methods, testing. Are there more affordable options that might be possible for some people? And then more on what we can do. But first, do you agree with what I was saying in the last segment with this distinction between where I think like most of the medical establishment is when they talk about iodine deficiency? It's a question of how do you define iodine deficiency? They're defining it as really a severe deficiency where you're having, goiters and such. And so, most people don't have severe iodine deficiency to that level, but where you have a doctor like Dr. David Brownstein, I believe he really is, seems to be the leader in pushing for more testing on iodine and using greater iodine levels to try to help people. And what he's saying is like 97% of people are iodine deficient. He's not talking about they're in danger of developing goiters, but he is saying that we don't call it deficient, but we are deficient, and we actually need more than we think we need. And this is quite controversial, but this is something he puts forth. He does have other practitioners and doctors and such that do support him, but he's been marginalized basically for that view. Is that a right way to think about it? Is that they're basically using two different definitions of iodine deficiency? The medical establishment is talking about a really severe deficiency. Others are talking about more how do we're deficient in terms of we're not where we actually need to be. We need to be at higher levels. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's interesting because the RDA recommends 150 micrograms for an adult daily. And if you compare that to what Dr. Brownstein would recommend, he's saying a maintenance dose of 25 milligrams. So that's a huge difference. It's such a small amount that the RDA is recommending. And then you double that if you're pregnant or lactating. And it's also essential for children to have iodine as well. And so there is definitely a divide when it comes to iodine, which is actually like a lot of things. If you look at vitamin D, I think it's very similar. The RDA recommends very low levels where you talk to certain practitioners and they're saying like 6,000 milligrams and up daily. So it depends on who you're working with. I go with, things that we're learning more like what Dr. Brownstein would recommend. I would say higher levels are definitely needed for people. It seems that there's deficiencies. It really comes from, if you have issues with your thyroid, they're so closely connected, thyroid and iodine deficiency. The symptoms are going to be very similar. So if you're struggling with your thyroid, the first thing they should do is check your iodine levels. I don't think that's something that they actually ever do because they don't really even ever recommend, like, let's take iodine and see if this helps you feel better. They're not looking that deep. They're kind of like, all right, how can we make your thyroid function better? But a lot of times people go on iodine and they're able to calm their thyroid issues very well, actually. So when you talk about the symptoms of iodine deficiency, some people don't even have it. So the symptoms of like severe iodine deficiency could be as big as brain damage. Or like you said, I can't even remember the name of it, but that one where they're stunted in their growth.
Cretinism.
Yeah. And that's, I would say that's a severe effect. in females, you can have fertility issues, miscarriage, stillbirth, premature birth. So those are the more extreme cases, but just smaller symptoms of iodine deficiency you might not even know you have because they mimic so many other things. It would be just very tired, muscle weakness, depression, weight gain, puffiness of the face, difficulty concentrating, a weak or a slow heartbeat, dry skin, hair loss, feeling cold, and issues with your thyroid. So those are just some of the symptoms. I didn't have a ton of symptoms like that, but now, once you started taking the iodine and feeling better, you realize, yeah, I guess I was having that,
What about cysts? Because it seems like that's a significant marker that could be pointing to possible iodine deficiency.
Yeah, actually, that's good. That's a good reminder for me because that was one of the things I started dealing with was breast cysts. And that was scary because breast cancer is rampant in women these days. And so you feel a lump and you're like, what the heck is this? And how do I go about dealing with this? And I did have several tests done and was diagnosed with several cysts. And so I was kind of thinking like, why am I getting this? And you ask your regular doctor, my doctor was like, oh, this is normal. It's just part of getting older. But then you start digging deeper and you realize that actually iodine deficiency is a huge reason that women develop cysts into their 40s. And so as soon as I started taking it, that also did clear up as well. I'm not saying it's like, that's going to cure everything, but it certainly is. I think there are studies on that saying that that's one thing that will help. And actually, if you go into Dr. Braunstein, some of what he recommends, and there's another book, if you're dealing with breast cancer, I think the book is called by Dr. David Derry. It's called Breast Cancer and Iodine. And he discusses the correlation between iodine deficiency and breast cancer. And there are many women who are taking high amounts of iodine in order to combat their certain type of breast cancer. So I'm not saying go out and start taking iodine if you have breast cancer, but it's something to look into. It might be something that you can use, in your tool belt as you're trying to heal. There are some things that go around with taking iodine, different supporting nutrients that really is going to increase the absorption of iodine and get rid of the things that we don't want, like the fluoride. We can talk about that later, but that's just kind of some of the stuff I was learning about too.
Sure. Yeah. It's also possible that iodine deficiency could play a role in breast cancer, in prostate cancer, in pancreatic cancer. And so these are all possibilities that some are talking about, and that some doctors actually are using some treatments based on this idea, based on this theory. I guess I would say at this point, this is not a scientifically proven thing as far as I can tell, but we are going to get into the science on what everybody does agree on, which is how important iodine is when we get back with some key randomized controlled trials on iodine. It's going to be interesting. Stay tuned.
In 1937, 20 years after Our Lady appeared in Fatima, Pope Pius XI wrote the encyclical on atheistic communism, precisely to warn the faithful about Russia's errors. Pope Pius XI, quote, "Atheistic communism aims at upsetting the social order and undermining the very foundations of Christian civilization. For the first time in history, we are witnessing a struggle, cold-blooded in purpose and mapped out to the least detail between man and all that is called God," close quote. Now that is really interesting, because right there, the Pope is quoting from 2 Thessalonians 2:4. That's the section that St. Paul is writing about the Antichrist. This satanic scourge is in opposition both to reason and to divine revelation. Entire peoples find themselves in danger of falling back into a barbarism worse than that which oppressed the greater part of the world at the coming of the Redeemer. Well, look around. Here we are.
That's Sermons for Everyday Living from 6 to 7 a.m. Eastern on the Station of the Cross.
Here at the Station of the Cross, we proudly bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners through radio and mobile devices, and we're grateful for the feedback we've received.
Catholic radio has just been a lifesaver for me. I start my day with it. I listen to it all day long as much as I can. There's always people calling in with people who've lost children, and I love what everyone has to say and the advice of the Catholic Church and how to deal with suffering. It has given me the strength to get through the day and to get out of bed each morning. I am very grateful for it.
Catholic radio to me has been very informative on my religion. It has informed me of many things that I wasn't aware of or should have been aware of, and I've enjoyed it very much listening to it.
If you've been blessed by listening to the Station of the Cross, let us know. Call 1-877-888-6279, extension 112. Then share your testimonial with us.
Simple Truth. Jim and Becky Havens here talking about the importance of iodine today. And if you want to join the discussion, give us a call, 1-877-511-5483. Any comment, any question today, 1-877-511-5483. And this ought to help us all to understand the importance of iodine here. These are some key randomized controlled trials on iodine, which are pretty rock solid scientific studies. So this first one, the objective to determine if iodine supplementation during pregnancy improves child development and other clinical outcomes. This was the population here was pregnant women with mild to moderate iodine deficiency, and the outcome was improved cognitive function and motor skills in children at follow-up. Another study here to assess the effect of iodine supplementation on cognitive performance in school-age children. So children aged 7 to 11 years with iodine deficiency, and the outcome was significant improvement in cognitive test scores, including IQ and attention span. Another study here to evaluate the effect of iodine supplementation on thyroid function and reproductive health in women of childbearing age. The population was non-pregnant women of childbearing age. The outcome, improved thyroid function and reproductive outcomes, including reduced prevalence of thyroid disorders. And you can think of it like a spectrum here when we're talking about problems with the thyroid, different thyroid disorders. It's not just like an all or nothing thing. It really is a spectrum. And then one more here is iodine supplementation in infants, the objective to determine the impact of iodine supplementation on growth and development in infants. This was for infants from regions with mild to moderate iodine deficiency. So mild to moderate deficiency, and the outcome was enhanced physical growth and developmental milestones. And so to me, when I look at those, I just think there's a whole lot here that seems very important that I've never heard of this, but I've never heard of the importance of iodine really before, other than the iodized salt, and that's to me rather alarming. It's one of those things that when you start to find out about it, it's like, why have I never even heard that this is much of a thing or a discussion, or like that there are people with different views on this, and that there are studies showing some pretty big improvements when it comes to some iodine supplementation for pregnant women, for women of pregnant childbearing age, for school-age children, for young children. I mean, this is incredible to hear these studies, at least in my opinion here. But Becky, what is your thought when you hear this? It seems like for some reason nobody's talking about this. We're not hearing about this, and again, that's why we are bringing it to the table today. It might not sound like a great topic in a sense, but then when you start to learn about it, it's like, this is a very important and great topic that we need to discuss. And I say we don't just leave that up to whoever. It's good to get a Catholic mindset around these things, to get things in proper order and to really try to think them through objectively. Becky, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. It seems that iodine is one of those things that people call like it's a miracle supplement, and it can change your life around. And I think part of the reason we don't hear about it that much is because it has been shunned by a lot of the mainstream media and different doctors, because well, number one, it's cheap. And if it's something that can cure a lot of things and is cheap, then how are they going to make money off of it? So that can be an issue on that side of things, which is, look, that's stuff that happens. They were like demonizing, like, I think it was zinc and vitamin C when COVID was going around, saying that's going to do nothing for you. But there's so many studies saying that those two are essential to boosting immunity. So sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And that's why you have to go outside of the box and start to research yourself and maybe do certain tests, like the hair mineral test that is a little bit stranger, and it's not looked upon as some traditional testing. But a lot of times traditional testing that you're getting from your doctor, they're missing things. So even when it comes to thyroid testing, I think there's a standard test. Maybe it's 3 different blood panels for thyroid testing. But actually, if you really want to test your thyroid, I think there's about 7 different things that you're supposed to test to see where your thyroid really is at. And so, sometimes doctors, it's just not their specialty. Especially especially like an ER doctor, their specialty is you go in and they're there to save your life, and that's it. And your family practitioner, their specialty is maybe to prescribe antibiotics if you have an infection, or to help with different things, your childhood like sicknesses and viruses. But you have to go to certain doctors. Even an endocrinologist would be helpful in this arena to be able to check different levels. They're really good at pinpointing things. If you find a really good one, they would know more about this as well. Iodine and such, and even how to get tested. It's not like you can just get a blood draw and see where my iodine is. I do believe there's certain tests, like a urine test, that can be ordered to see where it is. But it's not widely known because it's not really been reported on much. And there's not a lot of studies out there because I don't think they really want to do the studies. But it's interesting that you have doctors getting together and saying, this is helping with this and this is working for this. And this should just be a natural mineral that we should have on our own. The fact that we're depleted and deficient is an issue as well. So how is that happening, and why do we need these mega doses now? I don't think it was always meant to be that way, but if you just look at the way that the food chain is in general, it's depleted in so many things. And so what do we have to do? We're taking supplements to get back to where we need to be, and trying to get all this stuff into our bodies to get healthy. And it's sad because I don't think that's the way God intended it to be. I believe that he likely had everything we needed in the food and in the soil, but we've kind of come away from that for whatever reasons. And so it's good to be digging into things. If you have a lead and you find something, look into it more. And that's something that iodine did for me. It was not really on my radar. I had heard of it a little bit here and there and debated before, should I take this? But then learning more about it, there's a whole community. If you want to know a little bit more, there's a Facebook group on, it's called Iodine Protocols. I think there's like almost 50,000 members in there. There's so much good information that you can find. And it's not just, random things people are making up. It's number one, personal experiences, but also there's a ton of information regarding protocols and good studies and statistics as well. So it's not just random things, but that was really helpful for me. So it's always good to have people's experience with it. And again, like I shared earlier, to, if you can find a doctor who will work with you in this area as well, that would be super helpful.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that, when we don't know what we don't know. And then when you come to learn something, it's like, never knew that before. Right. And so you can't really, it's not your fault, I guess, that you never heard it before. Unless you were, I guess, lazy about looking into it. I don't know if I have been. I wouldn't even know to look into about iodine, right? But I guess to start to pull these threads about health and wellness and what's out there, I would say I've been pretty lazy about that. Again, not thinking too much about that, more focused on what I would see as more important things, which there are more important things, right? The spiritual life is number one. And at the same time, though, we ought to have a reasonable and just care for our own bodily health so that we can answer God's call to do the good that we're called to do in this world. So we do have to trust him that we are going to learn about these things at the right time as he wills it. Again, we don't want to be, I guess, lazy in our pursuit, but at the same time, we're not going to be able to look into everything. We don't have time to try to learn everything there is to learn. But this does seem like a very important area to learn something about and to really consider when it comes to our overall bodily health and wellness, especially surrounding pregnancy and children. And those are fragile times in life that I know as a husband and a father, I want to know how I can best help my wife in those times where she's most vulnerable, how I can help my children in times where they're most vulnerable. If there's something that commonly they might need more of in those times, and I've never heard of it before, I want to hear of it, right? And so, again, we probably all have stories like this when it comes to our faith, things that we didn't know, and then we hear it, and then we're like, I didn't know that, and then we say, okay, I'm going to stop doing that because now I know that's a sin. I didn't know it was a sin, and now I'm going to reject that and start trying to build the opposite virtue and get that vice out of my life by God's grace. Well, this is sort of, I would say, synonymous to that in our physical lives. One of those areas, at least I think it is for me. And there's a lot more I think I need to consider here and learn and possibly experiment with myself about maybe trying a little bit of supplementation and just seeing how my body responds. And yeah, maybe that's something that I might be a little bit deficient in and not realizing it. And Becky, that's how I would personally think to go about it here. I'm not going to look to pay a bunch of money to try to take any big tests or anything to try to find out, because it does seem expensive and difficult. If it was an easy thing, then sure, yeah, go ahead and test me. But if not, I don't think I'm seeing any big symptoms. However, there may be some things there. And so wouldn't, again, we're not giving any medical advice here, but I'm just talking for me personally. If I were to just maybe take a little bit of supplementation and just see how my body responds and see if it responds in some positive way, might that be a good idea?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that some of these doctors are saying that everybody should just be taking iodine every day. And that's just it. And you could take that as, okay, I think I'm going to try it and see how I respond. Or you could just be like, I'm not comfortable with that. I'd wait till I could get some kind of testing done and see how I feel. If you feel good every day and you don't feel like you need extra support, then I don't see the need to mess with something that's working out good. But if you feel like you have any of those symptoms of low iodine, I would go for it, especially if you're pregnant or nursing or maybe for babies who are not breastfed. You could try that, or children. But I mean, if you go through, am I talking you out of it?
Yeah, you're convincing me out of it. I mean, I'm not pregnant or nursing, right? I'm not a child. I don't actually, none of the symptoms that were named probably apply to me. I am feeling pretty good. So yeah, maybe not, yeah. But I guess I just hear that number and I have listened to a little bit of that Dr. Brownstein in preparation for this show. He seems quite convincing, authentic, sincere to me. And when he says 97% of people are deficient, you probably could do well to try a little bit of supplementation and see how it goes. It seems kind of convincing to me, but again, yeah, I guess I'm not seeing any big symptoms why to do it. I just wonder if, maybe I'm missing some sort of something in me that could be more optimal, and I wouldn't know unless I gave it a shot and found out. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from, and it's possible that they're right and everybody is deficient. So you should be supporting your body with iodine, no matter what. If we're low in the food chain and you're not getting much from the soil, I don't think there's anything wrong with supplementing once in a while. I do give it to the kids once in a while. It's really good for teeth health as well. If you're struggling with cavities and you kind of want to like arrest the decay in the teeth, it kills it all and it stops it. And so I've had to do that with the kids as well. It's great for a lot of things, especially if you're having some low immunity and want to kind of get back up on, feeling healthy. I don't know. I think we can maybe work something out and maybe you try it. The thing we can talk about next is you have to be careful when first starting, because there are some things that go along with it. There's something called the salt loading protocol that many doctors recommend when doing this. And there are some supporting nutrients to take when starting iodine as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to me, I can just maybe increase some seafood intake. That might be a way to try to do it as well. But we can talk about a bunch more in the final segment. Stay tuned.
This is Jesuit Father Robert McTagg, your daily host of the Catholic Current, and I'm asking for your help. Folks have been asking me to answer questions on the air, so I'm asking you to send questions to my mailbag. We can do this good work together. Send us your questions at thestationofthecross.com/askfather. That's thestationofthecross.com/askfather. I look forward to hearing from you.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network is dedicated to answering the critical need of access to quality, consistent, professional, and proven Catholic programming. We cannot rely on other media outlets to properly represent our Church. Catholic radio reaches Catholics, non-Catholic Christians, and non-believers alike. As a nonprofit lay organization financially independent of your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported.
Hear a powerful sermon you need to share with a loved one? Maybe there's a guest, prayer, or teaching segment that deserves another listen. You can listen to any of our network-produced programs at your convenience by finding us wherever you enjoy podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Podbean, and the free iCatholic radio app. Be uplifted in your faith. Listen today at thestationofthecross.com or on your favorite podcasting platform.
I worked in pro baseball for a long time, and we play on Sundays. And it was an easy excuse. I took the easy out and just didn't go to Mass. Got caught up in that whole selfishness, that whole, I can do it all. The times when I was struggling were the times I needed God the most. And now that I've come back and accepted God, my world has completely changed.
If you've been away from the Catholic Church for any reason, visit CatholicsComeHome.org today.
The Simple Truth. Jim and Becky Havens here, talking about the importance of iodine today. And we mentioned his name a few times here, Dr. David Brownstein. He's the MD that really seems to be leading the charge in this, alternative view of iodine and iodine supplementation. And so just a little bit on him. And again, I would encourage you to look him up if you want to learn more on this. But he earned his medical degree from the University of Michigan Medical School. He initially trained and practiced in conventional medicine before developing an interest in integrative and holistic approaches. And over time, he shifted his focus from conventional medicine to integrative and alternative practices. And he became interested in exploring how natural therapies and nutritional approaches could complement traditional medical treatments. Now, this is not his explanation of this, just one I found online. And so, he might say, you know what, that doesn't describe me very well at all. I'd put it this way in my story, but it does say here that in his clinical experience and his practice, he began to notice patterns of health improvements in patients who were treated with iodine supplements, and this led him to further investigate the role of iodine in health and disease. So basically, long story short, this guy's a conventionally trained MD from Michigan Medical School. He eventually stumbles upon iodine and seeing these health benefits and helping people. And then he starts to get curious and starts to investigate and starts to experiment. And he says, whoa, we're really missing something here, as he learns more and more and more. And I guess, Becky, as I was thinking a little bit, had a couple minutes to think there over the break. And I think this is the way I want to frame it, what I was trying to say in that last segment. I guess even though I don't notice in myself any symptoms that I would say would be a symptom of me being deficient in iodine, I would say what I've been learning here and what I've been hearing, it leads me to believe, though, that it's very possible that I could be deficient in iodine, and that many people could be, without having any symptoms, and that actually wouldn't maybe saying, well, the recommended daily allotment is too low. If we believe that, then why wouldn't I want to raise that? Can I do it with my diet alone by eating seafood, eating more iodized salt or whatever? Is that going to really cut it? Or are we really talking about a range here where I need to maybe try some supplementation to really bump it up, and to try to do this in terms of preventative medicine, so that I don't end up with those symptoms and that I don't end up with worse problems because of a iodine deficiency that I may have that I'm not currently detecting. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think that that's fine too. It seems the majority of people, the high majority of people who take iodine do very well, report no negative side effects. It's just not widely used as something that doctors give out. Oh, here, take some iodine, see how you feel. That's so not something that a doctor would ever do. So we're not used to it in that area. And so if our doctor's not giving it to us, people get nervous. But it's like any other supplement. You try it out, you see how you feel, and kind of go with it. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with people taking iodine to support their bodies. It seems like there's so many helpful benefits to it. And so we'll just share a little bit about, if you do decide to take iodine, you're working with your doctor, hopefully they'll give you this information. But it was something that was helpful for me because I would have had no idea that you shouldn't just start taking iodine. It was recommended to me that before I start even taking iodine for 6 weeks, that I should get on these certain supplements. There's called the supporting nutrients that actually help you to absorb the iodine once it comes into your system. And so you would start with between 2,000 and 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C, about 200 to 400 micrograms of selenium, unrefined sea salt, and magnesium. Magnesium is like 200 to 400 milligrams a day. Also different cofactors, B2 and B3. That is optional, but that's something that my practitioner recommended I do. And so I did this for like 6 weeks to prepare my body to be able to absorb the iodine. And then they share that you should do the salt loading protocol. So this was interesting, something I had never heard, but so we're exposed to so many chemicals, especially one called bromide. So that's in a lot of things. It's not necessarily in your food, although some like pastries and stuff, you'll see like non-brominated or has bromide in it. But it's also in like sofas and furnitures and beds, flame retardant. So we're constantly exposed to it. So between bromide and fluoride, iodine, I guess it competes with those. So you need to rinse out the fluoride and the bromide in order to be able to properly absorb the iodine. So they share that you should do a salt load protocol. And basically it's just for a day or two, you would just take half a cup of Celtic salt. So you stay away from the iodized salt. Iodized salt actually is stripped of all minerals. So it's kind of like bleached and everything's taken out and then iodine's added back in. So it's not really, it's just salt without all the good stuff that should be in salt. So it's not really the best. You really should be doing a Celtic salt or a mineral salt. So, it's just half a teaspoon of Celtic salt or other unrefined salt and a half a cup of warm water. And you do this like every 45 minutes until urination begins. And what this does, it just flushes out the bromide in the bloodstream and carries it out through the kidneys. And it's just a way of detoxing the fluoride and the bromide, and it just kind of gets it out. And that way your body can properly absorb the iodine. And some people do experience like a detox when they start iodine, and that's normal and that's okay. You might feel like insomnia or feeling jittery, nauseous, a racing heart, just being exhausted, or stomach issues, some bloating. But the salt loading protocol will help with that. Parsley extract is actually really good for a detox as well. If it just feels like, so this is kind of the stuff that might scare somebody off, but it's just that like iodine helps you to release a ton of junk in your body. It helps you to detox from heavy metals. And so you'll start to detox. It'll start to come out. And so you can have different, I think they're called like Herx reactions, but there's another word for them too. I can't remember. And so that can happen. It might feel even like you have like a flu for a few days, but you can back off the iodine for a little bit and kind of go slow. You can do 5 days on, 2 days off, until you get into a rhythm. And then that's when you start to feel good. So anytime you're doing a new supplement or you're adding in probiotics, there's the risk of having these reactions. It's just a detox reaction. Your body's kind of saying, it's kind of like waking up. All right, it's waking up and I need to start detoxing all of it. So it's a good sign, but can kind of like go slow with it. So sorry, that was maybe a little bit too much information, but felt it was necessary.
It's good. Yeah, no, in my opinion, and I will say opinion, somewhat educated opinion as I kind of go through all this, I do think there's something here and that I need to learn a little bit more about it and really consider the facts here as I can gather them. So I'm gonna do some more digging on this. But the reason that there aren't more studies on what would be, I guess, called a higher dose supplementation of iodine, I looked this up, and these are some of the reasons. It says much of the mainstream research on iodine focuses on preventing deficiency, and probably a severe deficiency, rather than exploring a higher dose supplementation for optimal health or cancer prevention. Research priorities are often set based on current public health needs and funding availability. It's just not where they're putting any priority. I'm seeing enough to think they ought to put some priority here and dig into it. What if there's a big finding to be seen here, and they're just not willing to do the study with all the money that is being poured into these organizations that are working on trying to find a cure for cancer, or to find out what's going on there? If this could be a significant factor of some kind, why wouldn't they want to study it more and find out really what kind of factor, if any, it is? Becky, final comment before we close it out.
To share that if you're looking to get some iodine, they do recommend Lugol's solution is Lugols, and the J. Crow's has a really great brand.
God bless you all.